Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a close look at something absolutely massive. I'm talking about an organization whose population literally outnumbers several sovereign nations, the Indian Army. We're going to dissect exactly how an entity responsible for the defense of an entire subcontinent actually functions, right down to its moving parts. So let's dive right into this. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, we really need to anchor this whole explainer with one powerful guiding philosophy. It goes, the safety, honor, and welfare of your country come first, always and every time. The honor, welfare, and comfort of the men you command come next. Your own ease, comfort, and safety come last, always and every time. Now, this isn't just some corporate motto, right? It sits at the very heart of the military's mandate. It's the core ethos driving the millions of personnel we're about to talk about. Now, I know a massive military hierarchy can seem incredibly dense, but don't worry, we're going to break the whole thing down step by step. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start right at the top with the Supreme Command. Check out the origins and sheer scale of the force, map out the 7 Army commands, dig into the muscle with the combat arms, and finally, wrap up with the support and services that keep it all alive.
All right, Section 1, the Supreme Command. The fundamental question we have to answer first is, who actually controls this massive defense force?
Well, when it comes to top-down civilian control, the ultimate authority rests right at the highest level of the state, while the day-to-day responsibility sits with the central cabinet, and that's practically handled through the Ministry of Defense, which sets up the policy framework. The actual Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces, that is the President of India.
But there was a monumental shift back in 2019. They added a brand new role to this hierarchy, the Chief of Defense Staff, or CDS. Think of the CDS as the ultimate connective tissue. They were brought in to really enhance tri-service integration, basically getting the Army, Navy, and Air Force all perfectly in sync. General Bipin Rawat was appointed as the very first CDS on December 27, 2019, acting as the chief advisor to the government on literally all military matters.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, Origins and Immense Scale. Let's shift our focus to the history and the sheer size of the Army to really grasp what we're looking at today.
Because, let's be real, a giant like this doesn't just appear overnight. Back in the 18th century, India's military was mostly a patchwork of regional armies and British East India Company forces. Fast forward to April 1, 1895, and those were merged to officially form the British Indian Army, which, by the way, fought valiantly in both world wars. Then, post-independence in 1947, it transformed into the modern operational Indian Army we know today. And, like we just talked about, it modernized its command structure again in 2019 with the CDS.
So what has all that history built? Well, today, India stands as the 4th most powerful military in the entire world. It's a true global giant with a massive influence on geopolitics.
To really put that ranking into perspective, you have to look at the human capital. We're talking about the 2nd largest standing army in the world. Get this, there are 10 lakh active personnel. That is 1 million active troops. Plus an absolutely massive reserve force of 960,000 troops. That's nearly 2 million people operating under one unified structure. It's a scale that is honestly just hard to wrap your head around.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the 7 Army Commands. So, how on earth do you geographically manage 2 million people spread across a massive, diverse subcontinent? Let's take a look at the brain of the operation.
So, the Army headquarters in New Delhi, working under the Chief of the Army Staff, basically divides the nation into operational sectors. You've got 6 operational commands stretching everywhere, from the freezing high altitudes of the Northern Command in Udhampur, all the way to the scorching deserts of the Southwestern Command in Jaipur. Plus, you have operational commands based in Lucknow, Kolkata, Pune, and Chandimandir. Oh, and there's one training command up in Shimla. Each of these is managed by a lieutenant general, making sure every specific region has a dedicated field army ready to roll.
All right, Section 4, the combat arms. This is where we transition from the geography to the functional organization. We're getting into the actual muscle of the army.
Now, all those millions of troops don't just act randomly. They're functionally categorized into 3 main pillars: combat arms, combat support arms, and services. Together, they fight as an incredibly synchronized team. Let's clear up the boundary between those first 2. First up, the combat arms. These are your primary fighting forces, the folks directly involved in close combat operations meant to destroy the enemy and hold ground. Right behind them, you have the combat support arms. These are the tactical enablers providing vital capabilities that the combat arms don't inherently have.
We're talking long-range firepower, mobility, and aerial protection.
Within those primary combat arms, the synergy is just fantastic. The infantry is the absolute backbone, fighting on foot in close combat. Then the mechanized infantry brings mobile flexibility, kind of combining the grit of foot soldiers with the speed of armored vehicles. And finally, the armored corps. They bring the thunder, equipped with tanks to lay down heavy firepower and maneuverability right on the battlefield.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Support and Services. This is where we introduce the real unsung heroes, the nervous system and the lifeblood of this giant.
Let's do a quick run-through of these crucial combat support arms. You have the Regiment of Artillery, providing long-range fire support, and the Army Aviation Corps handling aerial reconnaissance and pulling off casualty evacuations. Then the Corps of Engineers is out there building infrastructure and handling demolitions, while the Army Air Defense is protecting everyone from threats in the sky. And of course, the Corps of Signals manages all the military communications. The big takeaway here? To survive, an army absolutely has to communicate, build, and control the skies.
And finally, the services. This is where the whole teammate narrative really shines. Just think about the variety here. You've got medical, dental, postal, education, the service corps handling the logistics, ordnance managing ammunition, the military police, the veterinary corps for animal care, and intelligence. Because to keep 2 million people functioning, an army has to heal, supply, educate, and yeah, whether it's to a base in the city or a bunker freezing in the Himalayas, it even has to deliver the mail.
Which leads me to a really thought-provoking question. If the combat arms are the muscle and the support arms are the nervous system, could this giant survive a single day without the vital organs of its services? The answer is a hard no. It synthesizes our whole metaphor today. There's just a deep, unbreakable interdependence across all these military branches.
The true strength of the world's fourth most powerful military isn't just in its weapons. It's in the flawless, everyday coordination of millions of moving parts, from the supreme commander right down to the foot soldier, the engineer, and the postal worker. But as modern warfare rapidly shifts towards cyber threats, drone swarms, and artificial intelligence, you have to wonder, how will this massive, traditional living anatomy evolve to fight the invisible wars of tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.